we start with the champion hurdle and the fact that obviously I know it's been honeysuckle the whole time, but now it's been said that it's actually a little bit more competitive than what we thought initially. And just sort of your thoughts on this and this Tihu Fu. Do you think he is an actual threat? Some people seem to believe that he is. Or
Yeah, I think his latest performance at Goran was like he'd evidently improved himself, because he'd been beating Quilixios and Jeff Kidder in grade 2 and 3s by like a handful of lengths.
yeah,
And then obviously ended up beating De Rosso by 11 and therefore Quilixios by 22. So it was a big improvement from him. On ratings, I think it puts him, I haven't actually seen the latest ratings, but it puts him pretty close to Honeysuckle based on ratings. My concern with probably quite a lot of the field is that they are younger horses, and therefore stepping up into this division, it's very different for a horse to be running in sort of grade 2s and 3s against their own age group,
yeah,
than it is to be running against a mare who has been competing in this division for a long time, and I think that she's kind of almost good enough to like get a breather in a grade 1.
yeah.
Whereas I think that the rest of them are going to be, it's a step up for them, whereas for her it's just the same as what she's been doing.
She's got her allowance
And
as well.
yeah, and doesn't, yeah, exactly, like also has the allowance. So yeah, I mean, I personally would love to see this division become a little bit more interesting.
Yeah,
Um, but realistically, even if there were 3 together jumping the last, I'd still want Honeysuckle to win.
yeah.
She's the story, and she's a fan favourite.
No, definitely. No, cool.
Definitely. I mean, I suppose coming on, my question from that is, I think that one of the biggest stories of the National One season has been the Hamiltons, probably, that Ian and Anne. They've shown that you can do it on a shoestring budget. You don't have to be necessarily a bigger trainer to get wins. Obviously, they had an 18-1 win with Nutswell at Kelso at the weekend, and their biggest hope in the festival was to be in the champion hurdle with Tommy's Oscar. It was 25-1. He's shot out now to 33-1. I think as much as this morning. But given their form as trainers, do you think that Tommy's Oscar could make an impression against the likes of Honeysuckle?
Yeah, I do. It always feels a bit unfair, really, doesn't it? That just because the horse isn't trained by a big name, that they sort of almost don't get the kudos that they deserve. His performances so far this season have been good.
He's won the last 4 races. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's sort of nearly there on ratings. Let's have a look. He's 156 at the moment, and he's beaten. He's sort of won the trials that he needed to win, and he's won them well enough. I just think, I mean, like I said, it's always because I've been in the same boat, where I work for a small trainer, but they had really good horses, and yet, the prices almost didn't always sort of represent the horse's chance, just because you were in against sort of bigger names. I suppose that suppose that's just sort of, for me, he is a horse that I like, but I'm not. I'd probably still say he's got a little bit to find with some of the others.
Yeah, and I think we're going to touch on the fact that weather might make quite a big impact at the festival next week. Is that why we're seeing such a fluctuation of, well, certainly the fact that he's gone out to 33s now from 25s? Is that what you think's happened?
I don't really know what's going on with the weather. Is it supposed to be? It's supposed to rain in the middle of the week, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a little bit of everything, they say.
Yeah, I mean, that would probably come a little bit late for him, really, for Tommy's Oscar, because I think he's run quite a lot of races on sort of heavy ground. I mean, I've been in a position where I'm riding a horse that wants sort of heavier ground. Rode a horse called Agripart in the Stayers a couple of times, and you're always slightly hoping for that heavier ground, and it never comes. And I suppose this year we've had a very dry winter, and so it's you sort of half joking when you say, oh, you never know, you might get a heavy festival, but it never seems to happen. And they'll sort of ensure that the ground is good to soft at the beginning of the week, and whatever happens from there on in is sort of pot luck, really.
Yeah. So sort of looking at that rain that may or may not come for sort of later on in the festival, what horses do you think may benefit or may suffer as a result?
I think unless we're talking serious rain, I can't imagine there'll be too many hard luck stories as a result of it. But one horse that is interesting is Royal Kahala, trained by Peter Fahey. Now this horse they did release a press thing about what race she was going to run in, and I scrolled past it. Hang on. Yeah, so far he thinks that he'd rather go for the Stayers, but that was yesterday. She is an interesting horse. Again, she's a mare, so she get a mare allowance in the Stayers. And if the ground were to come up on the softer side, that would only be a benefit for her, really.
All right. One to keep an eye on, perhaps.
Yeah.
All righty, great. Sort of Tiger Roll, he's obviously sort of bowing out after this, or meant to. Do you think he is the main man for the cross country, or do you think that perhaps Prengard or some other horses may give him a full run for his money?
Yeah, I think Prengard has looked pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And has run some very good races over the last last kind of year, maybe even 2 years.
Yes.
He is a horse that obviously in France they have a lot of cross country races, so he's going to be able to just get into his stride and get his momentum very, very quickly.
Yeah.
I think the interesting thing is that he's obviously had a prep run at the end of February. He didn't run very well at all, but that was over 2 miles in a handicap hurdle. You wouldn't expect him to. That wouldn't put me off. think that for me as a racing fan, like I'd love to see Tiger Roll win, and go on.
Yeah,
To
well, I think we all would definitely.
yeah, I think that's another big headline story for the week, and you sort of hope that everyone will stick to the script. But he's certainly a horse that Prengard is certainly a horse that you would, not sort of cross off your list too quickly. He's looked good. I've gone back and watched some of those races actually in France, and he has looked very good. And you don't really realise until you ride in cross country race how intense it is. It's about 10 fences a mile, which is a lot. And you're always on the turn, and you just don't, there's not really a chance to particularly really get a breather in anywhere. It's quite relentless, and I think that actually having Tiger Roll running the race has given the race the sort of the kudos it needed, because it was sort of seen as a bit of a novelty race, and almost, a lot of people didn't really like it. But it's not until you ride in the race and you sort of realise how much, what sort of a horse it takes to win a race like that. Even to travel and jump and be competitive in that race is pretty difficult. And I don't think you really understand the kind of quality type of horse you need to be able to perform in a race like that. And it really, brings Tiger Roll to life, just like the ancient fences do. So, for me, he's won it. Just so, he's just been so much better than a lot of the horses in the race. So, it's he will be tough to beat, because he does absolutely love it there.
Definitely. I just to add on to that, actually, it was one of my highlights last year for sure. When we spoke to you last, I think you mentioned Ajas as one of your outsiders for the race. Obviously, he's pulled out. Are you surprised about that?
Yes and no.
He pulled out on almost exactly the same day this year as he did last year. I think it was one day.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because that was the David Cotin horse, wasn't it? And I can only surmise why they might have done, but it does seem a shame. But perhaps David Cotin thinks that they're a bigger fish to fry in France. You just don't really know, do you? I mean, the prize money over there is phenomenal. So this isn't for them. It's the kudos, isn't it? It is actually, they do it for the kudos of having said that they've won races at the festival, because actually the prize money is insignificant to them.
But it is the fact that Neil was saying, the fact there was the same day, but a day in between last year. So you just start to wonder what is going on there. But and as you said, maybe they just prefer the same.
You just couldn't call it, could you?
No. And I read somewhere that the owner just wasn't interested in going to Cheltenham, and he couldn't attend. It was some very interesting.
I suppose that's an interesting point, because obviously Cheltenham's more about the whole British-Irish rivalry, isn't it? Really, the French don't get up for it as much as the us home horses do, and certainly the Irish.
And I think it's owned by a Swedish guy actually who couldn't make it over, so he's like, let's not run.
Yeah. I mean, it was COVID last year, so maybe that has something to do with it.
Of course. Whatever it is this year, but maybe next year, third time lucky. So obviously we need to mention Shishkin. Do you still think that he will go all the way, or are there any other horses that you've seen recently, sort of over the last few weeks, the last sort of few runs, that you think are looking really fresh and
No, I think for me, obviously, the fact that we're going again with an Ergamine, yeah, I think the thing that you probably will tell you more than anything
Yeah.
is who Paul Townend chooses to ride.
Yeah.
And once you know that, then you probably got a little bit more information.
But
I
do
mean,
you,
Chacun pour soi, I'm not put off really uh, by last year's run when he finished third, because they sort of say that they didn't particularly go that quick, and maybe he just got outpaced after the last. I mean, he looked like the winner in between the second last and the last, so um, I'm not entirely convinced by that argument, but it wasn't the best horse that was out leading them. I think it was Rouge Vif. I mean, well, you wouldn't say that he I don't know, I feel a bit rude, but maybe he didn't set a good enough gallop. Nube Negra, of course, finished second, got to the bottom of the hill full of running, and Harry Skelton was able to sort of press the button, and he picked up second. Obviously, Put the Kettle On is a massive price for a horse that's won the previous renewal at 20-1, but she's not particularly run great races this year. But I mean, Henry Bromhead's horses were under a little bit of a cloud when she was running. And
Going back to Put the Kettle On, trust me.
Yeah, I mean, I've just looked at it here. Paddy Power is 20-1 at the moment, so you'd still have to sort of give her a tiny bit of a squeak. I don't know what they're doing with Editor de Gite, but obviously he's got course and distance form. And Envoy Allen, I mean, he's probably just not looked the same since he left Gordon's, if you're going to be really controversial. So it was sort of, it's still a deep race, and it never wasn't a deep race.
Yeah.
But obviously, the last time we saw Shishkin, it was a match race. This isn't a match race. Well, this is sort of Shishkin versus everyone else.
Yeah.
And although for me, he's the nicest horse in the field, I think he's the classiest horse in the field. In some ways, I'd probably say Chacun pour soi does have a huge amount of class.
Yeah.
As does an Ergamine, but we've sort of seen the chinks in his armour when it comes to versus Shishkin. So I think I think for me, you still have to side with Shishkin. I mean, I wouldn't back him, not at all, but I'm not a big fan of backing favourites anyway. But I wouldn't have a bet in the race on him, but I think it would certainly be a really interesting race to watch, because I think that Shishkin kind of is able to answer any question. If they go real quick, he can stay.
Yeah.
If they go kind of slow and quicken into it, he's quick enough.
Yeah.
We know he jumps well, and is able to recover from little errors that he, like for example, the one he made at Ascot. So I think he's sort of the horse that so far has answered all the questions, and the others kind of have to be able to answer his questions.
Who would you back in that race if it's not Shishkin?
I think I probably would go for Put the Kettle On each way. She sort of lights up for Cheltenham. They always say that, it's something that Henry de Bromhead often says, that the two races that she did win at the festival, he's said both times that, she loves Cheltenham.
Yeah.
And she's won at Cheltenham away from the festival as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's certainly a horse that I think, especially with that mare's allowance, you certainly have to bring into your calculations.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's funny you say, because I've backed Put the Kettle On for the mare's chase, which is one of the last races. So, but do you think she's generally an outsider but a contender in that race, in the first race?
Well, I think you can kind of put her anywhere. Last year she sort of sat second, but I think she can kind of really go anywhere in the race, which is helpful. It's whether she's able to just basically, she's an easiest ride because you can kind of put her wherever you want.
The fact that you're saying so she lines up, she's got a chance basically.
I don't see why not. I mean, I don't see why not. I think if the champion chase last year had been the one-off, then maybe you wouldn't be so confident about her. But the fact that she won the Arkle the year before, probably just makes you think, she's classy enough. She's classy enough. She beat some bloody good horses that day.
Yeah, I mean, I had her to win last year. Yeah, so I know I know what she can do. So it's like, yeah, you're right.
So yeah, I think she's an interesting bet, and I definitely wouldn't put anyone off bet by having a little bob on her each way.
Okay.
Sure.
Great. Wait, Neil?
Yeah, so just sort of briefly going back to we touched on the fact that French trainers and in lesser case riders aren't necessarily don't get up for Cheltenham as much as the Brits and the Irish do. Sort of coming into the festival, you've got Nicky Henderson and Paul Nicholls in decent form, and obviously we don't know until the festival gets underway, but is there any way, do you think they can keep up with the Irish, particularly Willie Mullins, given his just incredible track record in the last few years?
I think it will come down to, I mean, if you're looking at it from like a media perspective, if the English have a good first day, and whether that's winning one or two races, or Shishkin winning and maybe Constitution Hill, for example, winning, it will set the week off on probably a bit of a stronger foot. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean the rest of the week is going to follow suit, but from a media perspective, it'd be quite nice to at least have a day where you don't feel like it's a complete greenwash. The problem that I think, or the thing that really emphasised the problem last year with the Irish dominance, was the fact that in a lot of the races they weren't just winning. They were basically taking up first 4 placings. And when you look through the betting in the races, it's a bit scary how long sometimes it takes you to get to the English. You look down the list of the trainers and you've just got Willie Mullins, Bromhead and Gordon Elliott filling maybe even the first 8 in the betting. What are you doing? So it can, that's probably the worry when it comes to the Irish dominance, is that we have some nice young horses. I mean, Brave Man's Game, John Bond, Constitution Hill, all the novices, and obviously Shishkin's probably got quite a lot of responsibility in this sort of sphere. But I think it will take a while to sort of get back onto a clear footing. But I think we're perhaps in a better place than last year. But I mean, we all thought Brave Man's Game was going to win last year, and he didn't. So there's every chance that any of those English bankers, you might not actually come up with the goods.
Yeah,
it's say until day one of the festival's been, we don't really know. But do you think it's going to be closer then? I get the impression you think it will be.
I just think we possibly have a few more horses that you can kind of say, well, if it doesn't win, it should finish placed. But of course, Pied Piper came over for the trials day at Cheltenham, and won what I thought on the surface was a pretty deep triumph trial on the bridle by however far he wanted. So that, again, just gives you an idea that it's very, very difficult to compete with them. And also, if you look at it from the other point of view, Willie Mullins says that he's got about 55 to come over. Gordon Elliott says he's got 60, and Paul Nicholls has got about 15. So if our champion trainer isn't even bringing up, a quarter of what the Irish, like one Irish yard is bringing, of course you're going to find that the Irish are going to dominate, because
But it's inevitable. Yeah.
Several horses. Yeah.
So yeah, it could be a little bit skewed, I suppose, in a way, but it just goes to show that the Irish yards are incredibly focused on these basically 3 festivals. That's what they focus on. They focus on Cheltenham, Aintree, Punchestown, and the rest of it is irrelevant, pretty much.
Yeah. So at the end of the week, who do you think will be the top trainer and the top jockey?
I don't think you'd look too much of an idiot saying Willie Mullins and Paul Townend, and even if they're not, then they're going to be pretty close. So I think that's a fairly.
So you don't think Rachel will do a second running?
Rachel rode a few horses last year that she potentially wouldn't have done.
Right. Yes.
So Gerhard, for example, in the bumper, she wouldn't have ridden him because they would have put Paddy Mullins on, or an Hamilton probably. Allaho she picked up, but potentially she mightn't have ridden him.
Yeah.
You're probably going into the festival. I suppose we've talked a lot about Henry de Bromhead and his form throughout the season, and it hasn't been spot on. So a lot of those horses that perhaps last year you were sort of thinking, right, let's just, like, they'll be winning. You're sort of, there are a few question marks. I think it will probably be it's got to be an Irish jockey, hasn't it? So it's pretty safe picking Paul Townend.
No, for sure. And your top outsiders for any race, let's say 3 top outsiders, who would they be? 3 or 5, whatever you have, that you think is worth perhaps keeping.
Editor de Gite, if he runs in the Grand Annual, he's got course and distance form. He's a quite easy ride in one of those sorts of races. Editor de Gite.
Oh, yes. Yep.
He pops out in the van as well, so that keeps things simple for him. He shouldn't get into too many traffic issues. Imperial Alcazar in the Ultima won on trials day. Really benefited from a drop down the trip. He was a horse that was too keen over 3 miles. And my husband's just texted me saying Editor de Gite is confirmed for the champion chase. So there we are. There's my out window.
Exclusive. That's exclusive.
So Imperial Alcazar in the Ultima, benefited from a drop down in trip. He'd been running over 3 miles, and he ran at Chepstow. Looked on the surface like he jumped badly, but actually what Paddy Brennan was doing was just basically, the horse was so keen he was using the fences as sort of obstacles to try and actually get the horse to slow down. Once the horse was able to really roll over 2.5, then his jumping obviously was absolutely fine, and he won very, very nicely on trials day. And I think I won't go for another Fergal horse. I'll go for a Milton Harris horse. Mullenbeg in the bumper. Nice each way chance. Course and distance winner has won a bumper there already with, can't remember the name of the jockey who rode him now. One of the young lads anyway. And I think he's probably got quite a nice chance as well, because it's all, it's always about the Irish, the bumper. And it's just sort of quite nice to have a bit more of a sort of each way bet on something that already maybe seen in the flesh. I watched him that day I was there, so I watched him and thought it was a nice performance. So I probably just have a little bit of an each way bet on him.
And put the kettle on as well.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Of course.
Of course. Right.
Okay, can I just want to, so I've tipped 6 horses, sort of outsiders, some kind of varying prices, and I just want to get your view on them, basically, Lizzie, if that's all right. So in the very first race of the festival, Supreme Novices, I've gone for Mighty Potter, whose price is coming in as we speak. Now, I think 10 to 1s from about 14s. What do you think?
Tuesday, Supreme. Yeah, I mean it's interesting with these novices, isn't it? Because you're sort of you're always kind of expecting them to improve. I remember watching this, and his jumping wasn't particularly great, and he sort of won despite all that. Is this another one of these? It's not the same pie. It is, isn't it? Caldwell Construction.
Yeah.
Bloody hell, they've really invested, haven't they? They're from Bolton, I think, which is scary because it's another new owner coming into the sport that's gone to Ireland.
I like the way that its price is coming in now, definitely. I mean, any horse that goes from 14s to 10s in the week building up to it, that's a good sign for me. I mean, it might well lengthen in the next couple of days, but so what do you think?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's no, for me, I don't really see much point in backing horses that are
I totally agree, yeah,
that are favourites, and not so much, if they're favourite because they're Shishkin, then I'd just rather watch, because I just quite like to see Shishkin at work.
Yeah.
And if they're kind of favourites because they're the talking horse, like Sir Gerhard, who everyone just thinks is like the best thing since sliced bread, but he's basically not really proven that he is a star, then I don't really see much point in backing them either.
I mean, absolutely, I mean, there's only one favourite horse that I'm going to back, and pretty heavily, and that's Tiger Roll, because not only is it won more races than any horse that I can remember, it's just a wonderful horse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can make a case for a lot of these horses in the in these novices anyway. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put anyone off if they feel that they've sort of found something that's kind of gone under the radar. I mean, I wouldn't put anyone off backing something like that.
A couple more then. Unexpected Party in the Coral Cup, 8 to 1.
I mean, the Coral Cup, I just think, well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't, again, if you've got a theory about a horse, you think it's unexposed, you think it's open to improvement, and it's in a race like the Coral Cup, which Noel Feely once described as a flat race with speed bumps, then, well, fair play, go for it. That's, again, it's just another race which so much can happen. You might feel like you're on the right one, and you hit traffic problems and you never get through, or you get through too late, you hit the front too early or whatever. So it's just one of those races where anything really can happen, and a lot has to go right for the horse and jockey in the race for things to sort of pay off, really.
Okay, so I might probably want to steer clear from, as you say, because I think the favourite is, I think it's 8 to 1. So I mean, that's not a favourite in anyone's book, really, is it? So maybe steer clear from that. we touched on Paisley Park the last time I spoke to you. Again, he's kind of fluctuating 5 to 6 in stays, hurdle 5 to 6 to 7. Know what he can do over distances. It's whether he can match up against the bigger field in this case. What a triumph.
There'll be a lot of runners in this race as well, because I think it's so open, everyone will feel like they've got a squeak. So I think it will be quite a big field, I would have thought.
Yeah.
I think in the Triumph Hurdle, really quite like also Night Salute. Again, that's one who's definitely coming in, the Four Candles horse. Really, I do like that. I believe I do have a fancy for horses that wear red and yellow quite a lot, as Lottie knows. But that's going to be the colours that he's going to wear. But I have got a very good feeling about that one.
Yeah, I mean, he's at the moment unbeaten over hurdles, which I think is brilliant. He's picked up a grade 2, 2 grade 2s along the way, and the Adonis. Only question mark about the Adonis is that they slowed down in the middle of the race, and they won't do that at Cheltenham. If anything, by the time you've come up past the stands and you've worked your way down the back straight and you start heading up to, the little tiny hill which you come back down, they'll quicken there. Whereas, so that'll almost be 3/4 of the way they'll quicken. They will not slow down that hill away from the stands. That would be my only concern. He won it nicely enough, the Adonis, and it is quite a good trial for Cheltenham. But he did sort of have a lucky run. I mean, the run he had was absolutely like Lady Luck had paved the way, because the door opened down the inside and he was able to go through it. My one thing about him, I suppose, that I think is a real positive as well, is that he's highly tried. He's run plenty of races. He's got plenty of experience at this stage, against some of the others that have only run twice over hurdles. Pied Piper, he was really impressive last time, but I didn't think it was the deepest field. I mean, my mum trained the horse that finished second, and although he'd improved from his previous run at Newbury, he's not a horse that we thought would be a Cheltenham festival horse, and he's finished second to a horse that's basically favourite for grade 1 there. I think the other nice thing about Night Salute is that he has made mistakes in the past, and he comes back on the bridle nice and quick, which you'll need. You really need bridle horses for Cheltenham. You can't go with a horse that isn't hard on it, because you just lose your position so quickly, so easily, and you don't even really realise it's happening. I mean, if you ride a bad horse at Cheltenham at the festival, it's absolutely horrific. But he does, if he does make a mistake, he comes back on the bridle so quick, and that will really help. And also the fact that he's made mistakes in races and just got on with it is a big flop, because they've got a nice platform. We kind of have a handle on how good they are. But he's definitely got a live chance, and is probably, again, small connections, someone that people haven't necessarily heard of or seen at the races before, is not going to be as fancied as one of the big guns.
Yeah, I think my only concern with Night Salute is the last couple of times I've watched him, he's extremely ropey over those final 2 hurdles for me. But if he gets over them, he's very strong finishing. So I kind of touched upon Put the Kettle On, who is 10-1 in the Mayor's Chase. Obviously, he's half the price that he is in the one we mentioned earlier on. One other one, I guess, is Chantry House. Big favourite, big National Hunt favourite. 16-1. Is it worth maybe a little dabble? What do you think?
Well, based on what we've seen so far, no. I'm not. Don't write this down, but I'm not a fan of the horse at all. I think this is one of those horses who everyone got very excited about. And English racing, the style of English racing hasn't helped this horse, because of the fact that it just seems to be completely overwhelmed when it actually runs in a big race, like the King George. I mean, there'll be plenty of runners in the Gold Cup this year. The one thing that might help it, the Chantry House, is the fact that it doesn't seem to be a huge amount of pace on. So that might help, because it definitely just couldn't cope at Kempton. The one thing that perhaps I probably liked about his performance at Cheltenham last time,
I mean, he was 9-1 winner, wasn't he?
the thing that I liked about it was that actually he had to battle. Like, everything was going wrong for him, and he had to get down and dirty, and I liked that about him, because that was the first time that I really thought we'd seen him get himself out of trouble, and that's really important. You can be, if you're good enough to never get yourself into trouble, then so be it. But actually, even Rachel Blackmore talks about Honeysuckle being able to get herself out of problems. But do we really think that performance that he put in on Trials Day is going to be good enough to win a Gold Cup? No. No. And I don't mind if I'm wrong. I'd be amazed. I think it would be an amazing performance. But based on what I've seen of his Open career so far, he's not good enough.
So not necessarily one to back to win, but in each way, is that worth a go? A pretty decent price, knowing what he can do. No.
No, I cannot publicly sort of encourage anyone to back Chantry House in a Gold Cup.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to do this this little bet slip thing then, Lottie?
Sorry?
Did you want to do this favourite bet slips thing?
Or should we just go, last time, just to sum it up, we spoke about who do you think for Gold Cup, the Champion Chase. Should we just go through that and see if you changed your mind or if it's the same?
Okay, right.
So Gold Cup, Galvin, does that still stand?
Hello. Hello. Horses, you're gonna say hello.
Hello. Oh, so sweet.
Oh,
that's a lovely smile. What is
good boy. You want to see them?
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, Galvin. I think at the time it probably felt a little bit more, a bit cleverer than I've sort of realised it probably is, because he's now second favourite, and I think I still really like him.
Yeah.
I could be persuaded about Tornado Flyer.
All right.
That was actually only his second run at over 3 miles in his life, and they clearly like him. He's run in a huge amount of grade 1s in his career.
Yeah.
I think if I was going to try and be a bit clever,
a bit him.
I'd probably back him each way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Galvin at the moment is the most solid. So I think there's a little bit of whisper about whether Up Boutard stays. I think that's probably a little bit unfair.
Yeah.
Because I think he just got caught out last time when he ran at Leopardstown. I don't think that was necessarily that he didn't stay. And Manella Rindo, he ran a better race last time. But right now, Galvin could be the horse that's sort of the improver.
Yeah, great. And then we had Shishkin next, and that you spoke about that already.
Yeah, I think that remains the same.
Yeah, Hanasako, guess that haven't changed either. And then in the Supreme, what do you think about that? What did you have last time?
I don't think I prefer Dysart Dynamo to Sir Gerhard.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because he's getting a lot of attention now, isn't he?
Yeah. And to be fair, I like John Bon. I think that people are quick to poke holes in John Bon because of the fact that he's had a big price tag, and obviously his brother was. And his brother's obviously Duvan. I think that he has holes picked in him quite a lot.
Yeah.
People's expectation of him is like, but he can't do any more than he's doing at the moment.
No.
So I quite like John Bon. He got a little bit sweaty at Haydock, but he still performed well. Henderson said, John Bon won't particularly like big crowds and stuff, but once he gets racing, he sort of settles into his job. Yeah. Whereas Constitution Hill, the crowd will almost be a benefit to him because, he needs a little bit of livening up.
Yeah, to get going.
Yeah.
All right, and then last one, the Stayers. That was the one that you had the trouble to make up your mind who you thought would be the one to look at.
Yeah, I mean, the Stayers is just a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's an absolute nightmare. There's a lot of overlapping form.
Yeah.
Form that is just like completely bizarre, like Paisley Park's form.
Yeah.
You'd have thought that Champ was, disappointing on that occasion. I think if you felt like you absolutely had to have a bet, I see this is a problem. I still actually don't know. I don't know. I mean, Flooring Porter and Classical Dream, their form again is a bit strange.
Yeah.
Flooring Porter. Yeah, I mean, Flooring Porter probably would have beaten Classical Dream if Classical Dream hadn't got away from him the time that they met. But then Classical Dream's form in the race after that wasn't great.
Asterion for Lange.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what. I don't know. I mean, Ruby Walsh said recently that he's not sure he stays.
Yeah.
So
it's an open field. Well, let's leave it.
Yeah, so he runs in the Stayers. I mean, the whole thing is just like, if anyone can actually pick the winner, then fair play to them, because I think the whole thing is just bizarre. Yeah. Which is exciting, that's great. I mean, the fact that it is completely unfathomable is great fun, because you can sit here for 2 hours discussing what could win the Stayers for a race that some people don't particularly like. This year's renewal is absolutely fascinating, so it'll be a good race to watch. I'm looking forward to that.
Brilliant. Well, fab. Well, have a great time at Cheltenham.
Thank you.
Enjoy, and thank you so much for your time today, and it was nice to meet you.
Thanks so much, Lizzie.
That's
Speak to you soon. Thank you
very much.
Bye.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.